All right. We are back on the road again, different location. Sergio is back in LA, packing his bags, getting ready to make the, 18-hour trip over to Saudi Arabia next week. I'm in Oklahoma City for a couple of days where I spend a lot of time these days, covering the Oklahoma City Thunder. I will not be joining Sergio in Saudi Arabia. I've got a life event potentially happening next week, so I can't be a world away if said life event happens next week. I'm sure you can relate to that, Sergio.
Life event, that's a euphemism for you and your wife are having a baby. Yeah.
Thank
Good
you for being
luck.
specific. Thank you for
Good
that.
luck with that. I'm sure you probably will pass out at all the blood and all the stuff that you're gonna see. I wish you luck. Uh, I'm excited to get out. I'm excited to not be working with you. I'm excited to be on the other side of the world. Inshallah. Hopefully we get there in one piece. It's not bad flying 18 hours when you're in business class, man. I love the food. I love the people. You know what it is, man. It's all right. I sleep most of the time, so I'm looking forward to the rest and the getaway.
My only concern is, will you get lost in the airport? Usually, I have to kind of tote you around like a child through most of these international airports.
Well, lucky for me, I look international, man. I look ethnic.
Dude, you could
I get a
pass
lot
for
of help.
any. You could pass for any ethnic group. Like whatever country you're in, you could be a native of that country. Armenian, yes.
Oh my
Russian,
God.
yes. Spanish, obviously.
That is so true. No, I pass for so many things that I get a lot of help. Now, you, on the other hand, you pass for not many, and yeah, you get ignored. Yeah, people love to help me. So yeah, man, I'm gonna be just fine. And plus, you know what? I've done this trek what 4, 5 times already, maybe more.
Mm,
So I'm getting accustomed to it, getting used to it, and looking forward to it.
yeah, no doubt about that. We have done it many a time, and you're right. Sleeping up in the front of the plane, not so bad. Not so bad if you time it right. All right. On this episode, we are going to get into the fight that we have coming up. Before that, the rematch: Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn, set to go on Saturday over in London. Got that out. We're going to talk about how that fight might play out, who needs a win more. We're also going to get into the reports that Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul could be closing in on a heavyweight fight. Sergio, you're going to have to give Jake Paul some props if this deal gets finalized. We're going to get into that in all manner as well. But as we always do, Sergio, let's start this episode with our winners and losers of the week. Give me your winner of the week.
The dream, Devin Haney, being announced that he signed a 3-fight, 36 million deal with Turkey Al Sheikh, and his first opponent is a world champion, one of the biggest punchers in boxing at 147 in Brian Norman. You got to hand it to this kid, man. You got to hand it to Devin Haney, a fighter that has faced nothing but champions in the past 5 years. 9 out of his 10 opponents have been world champions, and the one that wasn't was Ryan Garcia in a huge fight. So he's making money. He's staying busy. He's just racking up the wins, and they're championship wins, championship caliber, and he's building a Hall of Fame resume. So my winner of the week is Devin Haney, Bill Haney, Team Haney, and how they keep just winning. No matter how much hate they get, no matter how much they try to get pulled down, these guys continue going the right way, and that's up.
The hate for Devin is interesting, and I've noticed it a lot over the years, not just from fans on the outside, but from a lot of his peers that think a certain way about Devin Haney. Now, maybe they think he's a bit of a phony. I got that vibe off of Brian Norman when I was doing that face-off between Norman and Haney, where Norman was quick to point out that a lot of the words out of Haney's mouth were some of the same words that Floyd Mayweather used in his day. If you something I'll violate. What is that? I don't forget that phrase that he used there. Yeah, I think there's a lot of a stick given to Devin Haney, but the reality is what you said. Devin Haney really, since he started to fight at the world level, has taken on the very best in each of the weight classes that he's fought in. I mean, 135, he won the belts against George Kambosos, immediately defended against Lomachenko, goes up to 140, fights Regis Prograis, who at that time, was considered the top guy at 140 pounds. Now here he is at 147. And yeah, it's not as deep as it was when Boots Ennis was reigning in that weight class. But right now, Brian Norman is the class of 147. He is the heaviest-handed guy at 147. And for Devin to go up in his first fight with a reputation as something of a chinny guy to take on the heavy-handed Brian Norman, I think that is laudable for Devin Haney. So good for him for doing that. My winner of the week is twofold. It is Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis. About a month ago, we saw Boots Ennis make his debut at 154. He knocks out Wisma Lima. Boots tells him, hold my beer. He goes up, and in his, third fight as a full-fledged 154, he knocks out Erickson Lubin in 2 rounds of that fight. Both these guys are now seemingly barreling towards a huge fight in the junior middleweight division. I mean, you could make a list, Sergio, of the best fights you can make in U.S. boxing. At worst, Boots and Virgil is like second or third on that list. This is 2 undefeated, in their prime, top, heavy-handed American 154-pounders. And I think their styles are going to make for a fantastic fight. I just love everything about it. So I think both these guys, even though we've had to wait a little longer than maybe everybody wanted to, I think both these guys are positioned to fight each other at the right time.
Yeah, they're definitely the winners. I was going to pick Virgil, but then you told me you were going to pick him. But yeah, man, what they're both doing is pretty incredible. And they're doing it from coast to coast with different, demographics of fans. That's what I continue emphasizing on, man. Boxing is at its most popular and biggest whenever you have, 2 different culture clashes, whether it's white, black, whether it's black, Mexican, or whatever it is. That's when you get, everyone out of the woodwork, and it has everything that you want. You want undefeated records. You want the only thing that's lacking is the championship belts, and that's the only thing that we don't really are putting too much stock in. It's the momentum, it's the fighting styles, it's the popularity, it's the different coasts that they're from, and the fact that they're so different. Yeah, man, it makes up for one of the biggest fights in boxing with no title on the line. That's how big it is.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the last podcast, but the history of the Black American fighter and the Mexican American fighter is long and filled with great matchups. I mean, top of my head, it's Chavez against Meldrick Taylor. That fight was amazing. Floyd Mayweather against Canelo. More recently, Canelo against Terrence Crawford. You go down the list, top Mexican fighter, top U.S. black fighter, and they just don't miss. They very rarely miss. They're always incredible matchups. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this one getting made. Hopefully it will get made, but we're going to get to that in just a moment. My loser, or your loser of the week, is who?
Darius Fulgham. And I wanted to say something mean, but I like Darius. Not mean, but I want to
pause there for a second.
I wanted to say, you know me, man. I got to throw jazz, but I like Darius a lot. I met his mom. I like his team. I like his family. I was going to say something along the lines, Darius goes by the moniker destined for greatness. He's going to be destined for the unemployment line if he continues blemishing his perfect career, man, because he had a draw and then now a loss, or a loss and now a draw with Beck the Bully and now Stevens. It's not a good look. It's not a good look when you have a big promoter, when you have Bernard Hopkins that paved the way for you, that's opening so many doors, and then you're going in the wrong direction. You have the looks, you have the hooks, you have the power, you have everything going for you. Now you're letting everyone down with basically not adjusting to your opponents. Beck the Bully, I could forgive. I could forgive that fight. But getting a draw against Stevens in a fight that you probably should have lost, that right there's a red flag. And he's going in the wrong direction. So DFG, I think he needs to nip this in the bud ASAP, or else he's going to be OUT, out this business.
Yeah, that was a disappointing performance by Fulgham last weekend. I agree with you. Like, you lose to Beck, but you didn't really lose in that fight. It was a great fight, and the reason you lost is because you let your guard down the 12th round, you took a knockdown. Had you won that round, you would have won the fight. So I think you lose a fight that way. You get back in the lab, you figure some things out. And that's what Fulgham told us during the fight week. He said, I figured out that I needed to get back to my roots of being a more well-rounded fighter. I need to not just be a come forward, offensive-oriented guy. I need to fight from the mid-range. I need to fight from the long range. Hell, he even got back to his wrestling roots to kind of figure out how to be better on the inside clinches. Then he was out against David Stevens and does none of that. None of that.
That all sounds good, man. All that sounds good. And believe me, I was part of the fighter meetings, and I really, I'll buy stock in Darius Fulgham, but he needs footwork. He needs foot speed. He needs feints. Everything is from the lower body that he needs. All right. He needs to fight like a taller man and then fight on the inside. He's a power puncher. He's a guy that could do a lot of things, but he's mixed in between styles. And the only thing that I see right now lacking is foot speed, foot agility, being able to move laterally, going in and out, stepping back and countering. That's all. That comes from athleticism. And he's a flat-footed, slow fighter that fights real relaxed, old school type. I think he needs to switch that up. Get some football drills. Get more basketball drills. Something with your feet, with your angles, with your moving around the ring. That's what I think DFG needs.
Yeah, well, he needs something. He got lucky to escape that fight with Stevens with a draw. Back-to-back losses would have been a huge setback. They probably have to run it back. Not that I want to see that fight again, but both those guys badly need a win. Maybe you bring them back together and have him do it again, but he's going to have to be better. He's going to have to show that he's on that level.
And one more thing. I know you hated this on the telecast, but I told you so. I told you so on Stevens.
Once again, for the umpteenth time, I never said that Stevens was not going to be competitive on the record. On the record, I never said any of this. I said it to you maybe in passing. I'm talking about
off the record, Mannix. I'm talking about off the record at our production meeting. Don't make me bring Bob Torrens up. All right, because
okay. But so what you're saying now is that on this show, any off the record conversations are now fair game. Is that what you're telling me?
I'll lose my job if that happens. No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, my loser of the week is not a loser yet, but I'm preemptively calling them losers. My loser of the week is anyone that gets in the way of Virgil Ortiz against Boots Ennis. Because I'm starting to hear some things, Sergio, that I'm not really liking. I'm starting to hear some things out of Oscar De La Hoya that I'm not really liking. I'm starting to hear some things out of Rick Meridian that I'm not really liking. I'm starting to hear some things out of Robert Garcia that I'm not really liking. These are all three people that I respect deeply in this game, but all three of them are starting to lay the groundwork for Virgil Ortiz not fighting Boots Ennis next year. I saw Robert Garcia saying, hey, we've got options. Errol Spence could be on the table. Jermell Charlo could be on the table. Who knows? A bunch of other guys could be on the table. Then you see Rick Meridian, the manager of Virgil Ortiz, saying we want $10 million. They want big numbers for Virgil. Look, they deserve as much money as they can get, but you got to make this fight happen. Virgil Ortiz seemed offended in the ring at the suggestion that Boots Ennis made that his side started the trash talk. Virgil was quick to say, no, it was your dad that said we were ducking. If Virgil Ortiz doesn't take this fight, it's going to be a Virgil Ortiz duck situation. That's kind of what it is, because we know, the one thing that Boots Ennis' team has communicated very well, we know that on their end, it's done. It's a wrap. They have agreed to the money. They have agreed to the terms. They've agreed to everything that's to do with this fight. You saw Boots saying to me in the post show, telling Eddie Hearn, whatever you need me to sign, I will sign. So they're ready. They're locked in. Right now, it's on Virgil Ortiz and their team to get it over the finish line. Now, I know they want to squeeze as much money as possible out of this. I know deep down that Rick Meridian has been dreaming about a Virgil Ortiz, Errol Spence Jr. fight for over a year now. He has been desperate to make that fight happen in Cowboy Stadium. I get all that. But this fight needs to happen first. This is the defining fight for both these guys. So if any of these promoters, managers, advisors, trainers get in the way and block this fight from happening, not only will they be doing a disservice to boxing, they'll be doing a disservice to their client, because their client needs this fight. Their client needs to show that he is the best junior middleweight in the world.
In the words of Abraham Lincoln,
oh God,
Give a man power, judge his character. And you can actually use that in boxing. Give a man decisions, judges decisions, or give a man options, judges decisions. However it goes, he has decisions. Now he can go from, okay, I'm going to take one more fight. I'm going to get greedy. I'm going to get one more big purse, and then I'll give you guys what you want. When he said the total opposite. So look, now we got to keep it real here, Mannix. Well, I got to keep it real because when Boots was offered this fight initially and he passed on it, we called him a duck. I called him foie gras, actually. I didn't really want to call him a duck. But now it's on the other foot. Now it's on the other foot. It's duck liver, Mannix. Now it's on the other foot. Now we got to call Virgil the duck here. I know, and it's not really Virgil because we know he'll fight everybody, but it's Team Virgil. It's Rick Meridian. It's everyone else. The promoter, everyone involved that wants to get one more, wants to suck everything out of this opportunity, from money to fame to wanting to marinate it. But that's when you over marinate. That's when you get a cut. That's when someone looks bad. That's when someone loses. And that's when everything goes out the window because you wanted to take one more fight before giving us everything when the time is right. The time doesn't get more right than this. Virgil and Boots are premium for each other. This is a perfect match, a perfect fight, a perfect scenario. And that's when everyone on the outside that manages those two fighters wants to suck something out of the woodwork just to get more money. And they're doing their job. I'm not hating. They're doing their job, but it's the disservice, like you said, to the sport and to the fans.
Yeah, and some of these options don't really make sense. Like we saw Errol Spence sitting ringside for the Ortiz-Lubin fight. Errol Spence has not fought in more than 2 years. Is Errol Spence going to come back in like February or March and take a shake off the rust fight and then go into a Virgil fight in the summer? I don't know. If you're Errol Spence, do you really want to do that? He hasn't shown much interest. He hasn't shown much interest in getting back into boxing in the last 2 years. Jermell Charlo seems to have a fire lit underneath him. He wants to get back in the game, but he's been gone for just as long. So the idea that these two guys could face Virgil Ortiz in the first quarter of 2026 is completely unrealistic. It's not going to happen. So I don't like the thought of waiting until the summer for one of those two guys to emerge as a possibility for him to fight at a Cowboy Stadium. And Sebastian Fundora, look, that's a great fight. Fundora is a title holder. Maybe Fundora can get out of this fight that he's got planned with Keith Thurman, but is that a bigger fight than Boots Ennis, even with the title? No, I would say no, it's not. Boots Ennis is a bigger fighter for Virgil Ortiz than Sebastian Fundora. So this fight, it needs to happen. I understand that Virgil's team would love to get the Saudis involved. If you can and keep the fight in the U.S., great, but it's got to be in the U.S. That fight cannot happen anywhere else. It has to be in Vegas, Los Angeles, some kind of neutral site where these guys can make a pile of money and put on the kind of fight that boxing, really badly needs. All right, let's start the show then, Sergio, with the big news that broke this week. Ring Magazine reporting that Jake Paul is finalizing a deal to fight Anthony Joshua. Jake Paul, of course, was scheduled to face Gervonta Davis in November. That fight fell apart. Now Jake has pivoted to the former heavyweight champion of the world, Anthony Joshua. They're scheduled to fight in December. That will be on Netflix. Now, Eddie Hearn, the promoter for Anthony Joshua, has tried to downplay this report, but from what I've been told, it is as close to a done deal as you can get. And look, I get what Eddie's trying to do. He's promoting a huge event with Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn. Every minute that you spend talking about AJ against Jake is 1 minute less that you're spending talking about Eubank against Benn. You want all the attention on that fight because it's a pay-per-view, and you're trying to sell pay-per-views. You don't want people focused on AJ against Jake Paul. But this fight is happening. Jake Paul is going to take on the former heavyweight champion of the world. Sergio, you have been a strident Jake Paul critic over the years. Strident Jake Paul critic. Are you ready to give him credit for taking on Anthony Joshua?
In the words of Aretha Franklin, I got to give this man RESPECT because he's taking care of business. Take care. It's TCB. I know you never heard that song growing
That
up, but
was, you just misspelled it in that singing.
TCB, taking care of business, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And he's taking care of business and he's going in the right trajectory. Now, look, we all gave him slack for fighting a 60-year-old Tyson. And then we kind of gave him credit. Well, I give him credit for fighting a former champion has been in Chavez Jr. But now what can you say? He's going from potentially fighting a lightweight 5'5" fighter in Tank Davis to going to a 6'6", 250-pound plus heavyweight, former heavyweight champion in Joshua. What can you say? Give me one boxer, give me one person in boxing that would actually hate on Jake Paul for this. Not only for his business decision, because he's going to make a boatload of money, but the danger he's going to put himself in. He could have easily picked out another lightweight or welterweight, someone smaller than him that still has a name, but he goes from lightweight to heavyweight. That's insanity. That is not safe. That I can actually criticize for whoever's sanctioning this, but forget about that. Let's stick to the credit. We can always bring out the negatives. Let's stick to the credit. Jake Paul deserves credit, and I'm giving him credit right here on this show once again, because this is something I have to applaud. He's going to make a lot of money, a whole lot of money, which is what he's great at, right? Being a troll and making a lot of money off his followers. But two, to come into our game, sneaking in the back door with a circus type fight with Tyson, and then really, getting the attention and getting his promotional license and putting some good undercards with a Chavez Jr. Now, Netflix, Anthony Joshua, the money, the fame, the attention, you got to give it to him. He came, he saw, and he conquered, because now, what can we say? He's fighting a legitimate fighter, someone that he's probably going to get hurt against in Joshua, and a fight that I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, I don't think from Jake Paul's perspective, you can do anything but give him overwhelming credit, really. Like, this was a guy that was preparing to fight Gervonta Davis. To prepare for Gervonta, he had a bunch of small guys running around his gym in Puerto Rico. Shakur Stevenson was down there working with him. Now, in less than a month, maybe a little over a month, I guess, he is going to pivot and prepare to fight a guy that is still one of the biggest punchers in the sport. Say what you want about Anthony Joshua and where he is at this stage of his career. Yeah, he was knocked out last year by Daniel Dubois. He is not the same guy we saw, in the mid-teens winning heavyweight championships. But as we saw against Francis Ngannou, if you mess around, Anthony Joshua is going to knock you out. And this is the way he knocked out Francis Ngannou. So Jake Paul is showing incredible intestinal fortitude in taking this fight. Everybody can point to him and say, oh, you're going to get paid a pile of money, tens of millions of dollars. All that is true. But to make that money, he's probably going to get knocked out violently. And that is not, even people that sit there from their couches and say they would do that, still have to do it. Still have to get in the ring with someone like Anthony Joshua. I give Jake an enormous amount of credit for this fight. And look, in 2025, he will have fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who at the time we all consider the best opponent that Jake had faced up until that point. A real guy, a former middleweight champion. He will go from fighting Chavez to Anthony Joshua. Two former champions at this stage of his career. Remarkable for Jake Paul. Now, Anthony Joshua is interesting. Like, Eddie Hearn has said that AJ was going to fight in the next few weeks anyway. Maybe it was going to be in late November. I'd heard some of that. Maybe it was going to be in early December. But he was going to fight before the end of the year, and one of these 8-round throwaway fights that nobody would have really talked about because it would have been against an opponent that meant nothing. That's how much Anthony Joshua wanted to get back into the ring. Now he's pivoting to fighting Jake Paul. I just said Jake is immune from criticism for this fight. Even if he gets knocked out in the first round, he is immune from criticism for this fight. Is Anthony Joshua immune from criticism here? Do you think this was the right thing for him to do? Or should he have gone down, he's talked about becoming a 3-time heavyweight champion. He's preparing, I guess, to fight Tyson Fury. Should he have gone down a more traditional boxing path? Or was this, and the pile of money that comes with it, the right play for Anthony Joshua?
No, at this point of his career, Anthony Joshua has already been to the top, to the bottom, and to the top again, and to the lower than bottom. This man has been dragged through the mud. People call him a quitter. People call him, question his heart. All along, he's getting huge paydays. Still keeping his his faculties, his looks, everything. And I mean, he's still one of the biggest names in boxing. Yes, he got knocked out against Andy Ruiz, one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. You can compare that to Tyson Douglas. All right. And then he gets knocked out by Dubois. Dubois was on a streak there. And now instead of, licking his wounds and going for it one more time and become a three-time heavyweight champion, something not many fighters have. I mean, Muhammad Ali became a three-time heavyweight champion. I mean, that is pretty incredible, and he can still do it. He still has the talent, the size, and the right matchmakers and promoter to put him in that position. But instead, out of all that hard work, all that bloody shit, all that criticism and embarrassment that he's gone through, now it's kind of like, nah, let me think of AJ now. Let me think of myself now. I'm going to get an easy payday knocking out this troll. And you're telling me I'm going to make 2 times more than I made, getting knocked out by Danny Dubois or anyone else? Come on, man. That's an easy pick for anyone that's been through there already. Now, if Anthony Joshua was at his peak and then he's doing this, like Tank was, for instance. That's why Tank got so much criticism, because you're not fighting other champions in your division. You're not fighting the other guys that are at their peak to see who's the best lightweight champion in the world. Nah, Joshua's been there already. He's been to the top and he's gone up and down. I mean, his career has been a roller coaster. Now it's time for him to detour into, easy money. So Jake Paul's going from Disney to danger. Jake Paul's going from danger to Disney.
You mean AJ's going from danger to Disney? You almost had that.
Correct. AJ's going from Dangerland to Disneyland. There you go. Thank you for correction.
That one. I don't have any problem with AJ taking this fight either. If he had passed on it, if he had been scheduled to fight like Dubois for the heavyweight title in a rematch and passed on it, then I would have said, all right, well, I guess this is where AJ is at this point. He's become a gimmicky fighter. But this stuff happens all the time. Like Muhammad Ali went to Japan and fought a sumo wrestler. Like it just happens in boxing. It's not a new thing. Guys have fought Butterbean in the past. Like it's not a new thing. And again, some of the guys that were being floated as Anthony Joshua opponents in 2025, they would have made Butterbean look like the heavyweight champion. Like Eddie Hearn has even said himself, like these guys were box rec 100 type of guys. Go down the end of the box rec 100 for heavyweights. See where you're going to find some of those guys there. So there's some of the guys like Joshua Edwards was fighting, in some of these early fights. So he wasn't going to fight anybody of any kind of real danger there. So I have no issue with him doing this. He's going to make north of $20 million for this fight, and he's probably going to win in style. And he's going to become even more popular globally because of this. This is the kind of fight that's probably going to get 25, 30 million viewers on Netflix. It's not going to be a Tyson-type number, but it's probably going to be in that neighborhood. Anyone criticizing this fight for AJ, whatever. Like, he's still got a plan to fight 2 times next year. The back end of that is supposed to be a big fight against Tyson Fury. As long as he still is committed to that plan, taking this fight with Jake Paul is just icing on the cake. You mentioned something, though, about whether it's an exhibition or a real fight. I don't think we have clarity on that yet. Probably not going to get it until next week. But I'll tell you, I don't really have a problem with this being a sanctioned fight. I mean, the sanctioning Mike Tyson-Jake Paul was goofy because Mike Tyson hadn't fought in like 2 decades in a real fight. Anthony Joshua is an active fighter. Jake Paul is an active fighter. There is no title on the line in this fight, so you don't have to worry about that. If the Florida State Athletic Commission wants to sanction this as a real fight, I wouldn't criticize it. I think it's worthy of being a real fight that goes on both guys' records. What do you think?
Well, if Georgia they wouldn't allow Tank because of the size and weight disparity. Why would Florida, sanction this? So yeah, I got to question a little bit.
Why? Well, that's different. Tank is
the size. The size difference.
It's not that big a size difference. Jake Paul's 6'1", AJ's 6'6". Jake Paul has fought as a heavyweight and was ranked by one sanctioning body as a cruiserweight.
Man, I'm playing the devil's advocate here because if they kicked them out of one state because of the size disparity, that's almost similar to the size and weight disparity that Paul and
it's not even close to being.
It's going to be 5 inches in height, man. All right, let's break down the numbers. 6'1" Jake Paul, 6'6.5" Anthony Joshua. That's 5 inches. All right, that's what Paul and Tank were going to be, maybe 6. The weight was a big difference with Tank and Paul. The weight's going to be about what, 30 pounds, maybe. It depends how
Maybe.
much.
I wonder. I wonder if
30 to
there's
40
any.
pounds, man. That's a big size difference. That's the difference between light heavyweight and a super heavyweight in the amateur. So that's a big difference. That's jumping weight classes, and not to mention the experience, the power. I mean, look at what happened to Ngannou when he faced Joshua. Now, mind you, Ngannou was a fighter, not a boxer, but a fighter who's coming from the UFC. He got knocked out brutally by a real professional boxer. Jake Paul's not a real fighter. He is a boxer in training. He just took off his training wheels. This guy haven't got clipped in the chin, let alone clipped in the chin by a heavyweight champion. If AJ did that to Ngannou, can you imagine if AJ lands that right hand on Paul and he doesn't get up from the canvas? How many
Yeah, but
people are
like,
going to be at fault for doing that?
Oh, come on. I mean, like, yeah, that's the risk you take. I get that. Same risk Francis Ngannou took against AJ. And
That's the
if
risk you take on even playing fields. All right.
how often
Not
in
when you
boxing?
start messing
How
with the
often
playing
in
fields.
boxing are there even playing fields, Sergio? How many Joshua Edwards fights have we called in the last month where you've got this former Olympian with a diverse skill set going up against guys that are basically just fat slobs coming off the couch? Like the difference in talent and levels between a top prospect and the guy the top prospect faces in his first 5 or 6 fights is more significant, in my opinion, than the difference between Jake Paul and AJ. Like, Jake Paul just beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Not to say Chavez Jr. is a great fighter, but Chavez Jr. had been fighting around that cruiserweight division for a while, had a skill set, and Jake Paul beat him. I think based on that win alone, I think it warrants having Jake and AJ be a regular sanctioned fight with the regular sanctioned type gloves, all the rules that go into it. I have no issue whatsoever with this fight being a sanctioned fight if that's the way they go.
Those are the times we live in. Those are the political times we live in
It's
where
not
money
political, though. I don't know why you
where
compare.
money can
But
influence,
are
where
you
popularity
actually?
can influence what you
You
can
are.
buy with the right connections. That's the environment, the atmosphere we created. So now he's taking advantage of that. Jake Paul's taking advantage of that. So I applaud him as a businessman doing that. But as a fighter, I'm going to stay in my lane. As a boxer and as a fighter, he doesn't deserve this fight. He doesn't deserve this opportunity to fight a two-time heavyweight champion who's just at the end of his career. He hasn't even announced his retirement, Joshua. He's just, his last fight he got knocked out, but he's come back from knockouts before. He went on one of his best winning streaks after getting back-to-back losses to Usyk. So I don't know what to tell you, man. As a fighter, I disagree with this. As a fan, whoever
Yeah,
wants
but
to
no,
watch
hold on,
it,
hold on. But then if you're okay, then you need to have the same problem with the guys that Pat Brown has been beating the crap out of, or the guys that Joshua Edwards have been beating the crap out of, because these guys are fighting defenseless opponents, guys that are barely fighters. And if they are fighters, they are well past their prime, like a guy like Felix Valera was when Pat Brown faced him a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm telling you, I'm using Joshua Edwards as an example because we've called, I think, pretty much all of his fights early in his career as he's gotten to 5-0. He's just fighting guys like Cayman Audi, and I forgot the guy's last name this past week already. The guy that fought in Colombia because he liked the women. Like, this is like you're not fighting anyone with a real skill set. You're basically fighting punching bags. Jake Paul, at the very least, is going to this fight thinking, you know what? I've seen AJ clipped a few times. AJ might have lost his punch resistance. I know I've got a pretty good right hand. If I land that right hand, maybe I can shock the world and knock out Anthony Joshua. Put it this way. Jake Paul has a better chance of beating Anthony Joshua than any of the guys that Pat Brown or Joshua Edwards fought up until this point. Would you agree with that?
yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
But as I don't agree that Jake Paul is going to get even remotely close to landing an overhand right.
It's not the point,
Joshua.
though. It's not
That's
the
it.
point. It's not
No,
the
no,
point.
yeah, yeah. Well, if that's the point, every great fighter, every champion makes his bones fighting guys on the come up that don't belong in the ring with them. That's just a rite of passage, and then you quickly know where you're at, and you learn. You go from the amateur game to the professional game, and you got to learn from these guys that have a little bit more professional experience than you. They're not better than you, but they have more fights than you. So that's the only thing that you can make a case for here. Yes. And since we're talking about Anthony Edwards, yes, this guy is a decorated amateur. Yes, he's
Joshua Edwards. Anthony Edwards plays for the
Joshua. I'm
Tigers.
sorry. Yeah. Yes, he's a decorated amateur, Edwards was, but he's fighting guys with sometimes more experience than him. Experience meaning more fights, even though they're 50-50 losing records. So you can actually kind of just say, all right, well, it's a wash. This guy has fought more professionally, but he's lost, more times than Edwards has won. With AJ, you can't do that. AJ has fought, what, 40 times, maybe under 40, but still, you're going to be fighting a guy with a dozen fights and Jake Paul. Just the math doesn't math.
All right, just for the record, Joshua Edwards' first opponent was Larry Gonzalez. He was 0-1. Next opponent, Alexander Rhodes, was 2-1. Next opponent, 6-3. Next opponent, 4-1.
6-3. There you go. I got one. Nine fights.
Great. Great. 6-3. Congratulations.
That's a winning record, too, by the way.
Weighed 251 pounds.
That's a winning record.
This fight.
Who was the guy that was 6'3"? 6-3.
Dominic Hardy.
That guy would beat Jake Paul. Give him a 2-month training.
Dominic Hardy, who is 6'3",
Dominic Hardy beats Jake Paul.
Okay.
I'll put my child's tuition on it.
Oh my. Okay.
Dominic Hardy beats Jake Paul. But that's
Dominic
the brilliance of Jake Paul, though. We're never going to see that because it doesn't belong that. Hardy doesn't deserve that. It's the business savvy and the business the mind of Jake Paul and his following, and I was capitalizing on it. And then he kindly ventured out into boxing because he's that athletic and he's that strong and he has the means to get the best trainers and nutritionists to advance faster than most. So you can't knock on that. I give you the good. I give you the bad with Jake Paul. This is bad, fighting a huge monster, a puncher like Joshua.
I would take that bet of your child's tuition of Jake Paul against Dominic Hardy. Dominic Hardy has 4 losses on his resume. 3 of them have been by first-round knockout. 3 of them.
You get 2 months with Hardy. I'll turn him into
you can turn him into a killer. That's for sure. All right, let's talk about the fight we're going to see this weekend. Another fun matchup between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. The first fight lived up to expectations, exceeded expectations. A really, really fun fight in the ring. I've heard some criticism of that first fight by people saying it wasn't a high-level fight. I don't care. No, neither one of these guys is a pound-for-pound entry, but that doesn't mean that it can't make a great fight.
High level as what? As in skill?
Yeah, and skill. Like one of the great trilogies in boxing history is Arturo Gatti against Mickey Ward. Nobody's sitting there saying Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward are great tacticians, but the styles make fights, and you add the rivalry to it, the history with the fathers of these two men. That was just fun all the way around. That fight happened back in April. Chris Eubank Jr. won a unanimous decision. Now they go again in November. So, Sergio, I want to start with this. Big fight for both these guys for different reasons. Which one of them do you think needs a win in this fight more?
That is easy. Conor Benn. Actually, the Benn legacy needs it because the Benn legacy, the Benn name, whether it's Nigel or Conor, they've been coming up short to the Eubanks, so it just, the Eubanks have their number. That's just the way it is. Benn is moving up in weight, so he's going to be the smaller fighter. He's already at a disadvantage in size and height and reach, all that. And because of that, Eubank Jr. won the first fight and won it comfortably in an exciting fight, in a fight that wasn't really technical, because that's what happens when you have bad blood. That's what happens when you guys when you have one fighter in Conor Benn that's moving up in weight that needs to make it a physical fight. He needs to throw technique out the window and just throw caution to the wind. And a guy like Eubank that needs to refrain from giving Benn that smaller man fight. He needs to fight long. He needs to be disciplined, fight behind the jab, use the entire ring. But it's only a matter of time before that ring gets smaller and smaller to the younger, stronger, the younger fighter with more adrenaline in Benn. That's why the end of that fight was so exciting, because Benn started making a case for, and I want to see this fight again. But it's going to happen again, man. That's just the way it is. It's going to be another competitive fight where Eubank Jr. is going to have all the advantages. He's going to have the same game plan. He knows what to expect. And it's probably going to be, I wouldn't go say easier, but it's going to be just as good, where it's just as competitive, just as good, but we know who the winner is, and that's going to be Eubank Jr. again.
Well, I would start by agreeing with you that I think Conor Benn needs it more. I don't really care about the legacy stuff. It's two different people. Like, he doesn't need to avenge his father's failures. He just needs to worry about his own career. But I think having a second consecutive loss would hurt him. And I understand that he's not a natural middleweight. When this fight's over, he's going to drop back down, whether it's to 154 or 147, and begin his career anew. But I also don't think it's a foregone conclusion that if Conor Benn drops back down to welterweight, that he's going to win a fight against Devin Haney. Or if he drops to 154, that he's going to win a fight against the winner of Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis. He certainly can be in these fights because what this, rivalry with Eubank Jr. has done is it has increased his marketability tenfold. Like Conor Benn for a little while, because of the positive drug test, because he couldn't fight in the UK, he was kind of lost in the wilderness. He was fighting in the US on nondescript shows. He was fighting in the afternoon in the US so that Matchroom could maximize his visibility over in the UK. These two fights with Eubank Jr. have revived that name. They have brought him back to life as a marketable opponent. But I think he needs to show that he's a top fighter. And he got beat clean the first time. If he gets beat clean the second time, I know what the narrative will be. It'll be like, well, Conor's going to drop back down. He'll be at his natural weight. He'll win a world title at those weight classes. Maybe he will. But I think he needs this win for himself. I think he needs to get a win, then go back to a smaller weight and do it with some momentum.
Not even a win, Mannix. I don't even think Conor Benn needs to win. I think if he gets a draw, we're going to see a trilogy. We're going to see this fight again, and it's going to be the middleweight version of Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield. I don't know if you remember that trilogy.
Yep.
It was a win for Riddick Bowe. It was a draw, and then Holyfield got knocked out, or it was a win apiece, and then Holyfield got knocked out. But the better man won. The better man was consistently in charge of all three fights. And I think if these guys happen to fight three times, it's going to be the exact same thing where by the third fight, Conor Benn will get stopped by the bigger, better fighter here. That's what happens when you jump weight divisions. Yes, your strength, Conor Benn's a damn good fighter, but he's just naturally small. You see him in person, he's dense. He's a dense guy. I don't know if you've seen on social media, Rolly Romero was confronting Conor Benn's like, dude, you're small. They're the same weight. And I get what Rolly was saying. Rolly's a wide, muscular, big fighter at lightweight and junior welterweight. Benn's a welterweight, junior middleweight, and they look the same size. So Conor Benn's not a big fighter. So him having to gain weight to fight a taller fighter with longer shoulders, longer reach, and Chris Eubank Jr., he's always going to be at the end of that jab and at the end of the decision.
So it sounds like you believe that this is going to be another clean win for Eubank Jr. Let me set up some of the variables here. Conor Benn, I think will be better because he's got the experience of going 12 rounds with Eubank. I don't think he'll be as emotional going into this fight. I mean, you saw in those first few rounds against Eubank, just sort of the raw emotion coursing through Conor Benn. The combination
it's that emotion that made it exciting. It's that
but it wasn't good for Conor Benn. It
wasn't good for Conor Benn, but he's getting the rematch. It was an interesting
I know. I'm just hold on. Stop. I'm trying to point out that he's going to fight differently in the first half of this fight because I think he'll learn from those mistakes. He's not going to be as emotional going to this fight. The tension going into this one has been a fraction of what the prior one was. Like there's been no egg slapping. There's been no altercations at press events. In fact, there's been a lot of I kind of respect you. I kind of like you. That sort of stuff going on between these two guys, or at least from Conor Benn's perspective. He's had the experience of fighting in front of 68,000 people at Tottenham, which is, was a unique experience for Conor Benn. I think he's going to be better going into this fight. But I also think that Eubank Jr. is going to be better. I think that having 2 extra months to prepare is going to benefit Chris Eubank Jr. a lot more than it benefits Conor Benn. Chris Eubank is the older fighter who held his ground. He said, I'm not fighting in September. It was contractually set for September. Eubank said, nope, not going to do it. Took the extra couple of months, gave his body more time to recover, gave him time to go through a natural training camp. I think that benefits Eubank a lot more than it benefits Conor Benn. I also love the addition or re-addition of Brian McIntyre to this team. Like Brian McIntyre was the architect of the game plan of Eubank's win over Liam Smith, the comeback win, when Eubank badly needed to beat Liam Smith to keep his career alive. It might have been over had he lost to Liam Smith. If he was knocked out by Liam Smith again, there's no coming back from that if you're Chris Eubank Jr. He got with Bomac, and he put on one of, not the best performances of his career. Now, they split after that, which was about what you expect it to be about. It was about money. It always is about money. But now they're back together, and I think having Bomac, having his mind, having his team, all the guys that come with Bomac. It's not just Bomac. It's Red Spikes. It's his entire group of people that have helped make Terrence Crawford and Keyshawn Davis and so many other fighters top-level guys. They're all part of this as well. I think that's going to benefit Chris Eubank Jr. as well. So while I think both these guys are going to be improved off the first fight, I like the improvements that Eubank is going to, or has been able to make, more than I like the ones that Conor Benn did.
There you go. You said it. And I'm sure you heard the famous saying, a great big man will beat a great small man. Well, that just goes to show you that
Except
saying,
in Canelo Crawford.
Yeah, there's exceptions to the rule. Absolutely. But this is not Canelo Crawford. Eubank Jr. has never even faced the best in his weight division. He's a popular fighter, a good-looking fighter, and he comes from legacy, but he's never faced the absolute monsters in his division. He's calculated his career to success, and that's why I like Chris Eubank Jr. for his ability, his strategy, his fighting style. I like him for everything. Now, Conor Benn, I got to know in person when he was fighting on Matchroom shows. I hung out with him. I talked to him. I liked him. I like the dude, man. He has that chip on his shoulder. He has emotion. I seen this dude cry in an interview. So he went from rage to crying to inspiration, and I love that, man. That's what you could sell. I am pulling for Conor Benn. That's how objective I am here, Chris Mannix. I'm pulling for Conor Benn to beat Eubank Jr. I just don't think it happens. That's how you know that I'm giving you the 100% truth. Eubank Jr. rubs me the wrong way. I'll be honest with you. I don't like his style. I don't like the way he talks. I don't like the way he carries himself. But he's
all of it.
He's entertaining. But he's magnetic. He's charismatic with the way he is and the way he dresses. You just want to punch him in the mouth. A lot of people want to do that, but you can't. And that's the reason he's still around, and that's the reason he beats Conor Benn. Can I ask this?
How do you, widely regarded as one of the most annoying human beings in the world during your fighting days, the most irritating person on earth, according to Daniel Jacobs, how is it that you don't like the way that Chris Eubank Jr. conducts himself? How does that square?
Same reason I don't like you, because you sucked out the golden teat growing up. You grew up with a golden spoon. So that's the reason. You guys had the easy way, and he'll admit that he had the golden road to success. And guys like me and a lot of fighters, they don't have that. They got to do it the rugged way, the Marvin Hagler route. So that's the reason I kind of hate on that, and the fact that he's been around for so long, avoiding the big names. And there's huge names in the UK that he never faced. He faced B.J. Saunders, but that wasn't a super middleweight. Chris Eubank Jr. has been a career super middleweight. So that's the reason I kind of criticize him a little bit.
All right. For the 1,457th time, I did not.
My dad was a cop.
I did not grow up rich. Okay. Let's just establish that once again. I love the way Eubank Jr. conducts himself. I think his ability to irritate is a skill, which I think like if his ability to get under Conor Benn's skin affected Conor Benn in that fight. I've never seen too many people get the best of Eddie Hearn at a press conference, but Chris Eubank Jr. Certainly did that. So I love this. I love the entire way he conducts himself. I've watched that ring walk with him and his dad about 100 times. Like, that was awesome to hear his dad's music play on the way out, and then to pivot to Forgot About Dre after that, the Eubank walkout song. Awesome. Just absolutely chilling to see that.
It's show business, man. It's show business, and the Eubanks.
He's a showman. Yeah, in different ways. But I love this fight and everything about it. I do think Eubank pulls out a decision, though, and I think he moves on to potentially a big fight, 168 pounds sometime next year. Last thing I want to ask you about. We got word this week that Jermaine Franklin is going to be the opponent for Moses Atama. Moses Atama has been discussing a number of opponents over the last couple of months. There was a push for a while to do Moses Atama against Alexander Usyk. That crumbled pretty quickly. Makhmudov, who just beat Dave Allen, he was in the mix for that fight. Ultimately, Queensberry settles on Jermaine Franklin, who has been a durable guy in his high-level fights, with the distance with Dillian Whyte, with the distance with Anthony Joshua. What do you think of Jermaine Franklin as the opponent for Moses Itauma?
I love the matchmaking because Itauma's going to get some rounds. He's going to have his hands full with Franklin. I don't know if you remembered when AJ picked Franklin as an opponent. We did a pot on it. I said, AJ's going to have his hands full. I see this fight going to decision. Franklin's a smaller fighter that can fight small. He loops his shots. He has good footwork. He's athletic. I think the same thing here. Franklin's never been stopped, like you said. He's been in there with two, guys that have been there with the absolute best, and Dillian Whyte and AJ. That experience means something. Itauma, we've seen what he just did with Whyte, but that was an older Whyte. That was a Whyte that was just, he's finished by this time of his career. So I like this. I like this fight. Going from Dillian Whyte to another solid name in Franklin. Yeah, it's going to make him a better fighter. I think he still gets the late round stoppage, but he's going to go through some adversity. He's going to learn on the job, and ultimately it's going to make him a better fighter, because you try to avoid experienced veterans like Franklin with only a dozen fights. Even if you have all the talent and power in the world like Moses Itauma does, you still got to be careful, because you want to take that talent and you want to elevate it to the championship level, and you want to continue making the most amount of money. You actually want to have the right matchmaking. This is right matchmaking at the right time. So I like this fight. This is a perfect fight for Moses Itauma.
Yeah, I would have preferred Makhmudov only because Makhmudov was coming off that win over Dave Allen, and I think that would have been a chance for Itauma to look spectacular against a bigger name maybe in Makhmudov. But I think Jermaine Franklin is a perfectly reasonable substitute. I mean, Jermaine Franklin, like you said, distant fights with Whyte, distance fight with AJ, fights small, and is not washed. Not washed. Like, he's won 3 fights in a row since that loss to Anthony Joshua. He just fought on the Canelo Crawford undercard, beat Ivan Ditchko, who, isn't very good, but was undefeated at that time. So he's got a little bit of momentum going into this fight based on his social media. He's sounding like he's motivated. I think he's going to present some new challenges for Moses Itauma. It's going to make him work a little bit. I still think he gets a knockout, Sergio, but I think he's challenged in it.
No, I think he'll end up getting the knockout, is because this is why I think the matchmaking was brilliant, and I always love matchmaking because it's a science. You gotta get the right name at the right time, and then you amaze fans. So Jermaine Franklin, for all the things that you and me just said, great, but he hasn't fought a southpaw in 6 years, and that last southpaw that he faced, he got a split decision against, and that was against Jerry Forrest. So maybe he doesn't fight southpaws that good. And Itauma is the southpaw. Usyk-like southpaw, a sniper-type southpaw with power. That's the reason I love the fact that this opponent got introduced to Itauma, because of that lack of southpaw resume that he has.
Yeah, I think it's a good fight, and hopefully sets up a busy year for Itauma in 2026. I don't think he needs to focus on Usyk. I don't even think he needs to focus on a championship. He's still relatively young in his pro career, and even though he's making a lot of moves quickly, just stay busy, man. Don't fight twice a year. Fight 4 times a year. That's where he's at in 2026. Maybe one of them will be for a vacant title, interim title, whatever. But stay busy, fight 4 times a year, and start taking those next steps. And you, Sergio, your next step, unfortunately, is not to Jake Paul. I know you're disappointed. I know, I heard, actually, my reporting was it was AJ, and you were right there next. You were the next.
It went from
guy
Gervonta Davis to Anthony Joshua to a Mexican and Sergio Mora. Hey, I'm right here. Listen, man, Joshua injures himself, I'm ready to go. I'm hitting the bag in LA Fitness. I'm somewhat active. All right, so just in case, I'll be right here. Make me the offer. I'd love to take that fight.
Emphasis on somewhat active.
Somewhat, it's about 2 times a week. Yeah.